Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy Charles Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Reverend Leanne Bryce from the First Congregational United Church of Christ in Fort Worth. Thank you very much for coming out today. After our invocation, please remain standing for our pledges.
Oh God, we are grateful to live in a nation governed by democracy. In our hands is the honor and responsibility to shape our society. So today we pray for all of those involved in proceedings in this court, and we pray for those who will make decisions affecting the lives of others. May they carry out their duties justly, with wisdom, fairness, and equity. We pray your blessing on these public officials and on all who have dealings here. And may the actions of all of us on this day bring us closer to your realm of peace and justice. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you, Reverend Bryce, for being out here, coming out on this day and opening us with prayer.
We do appreciate it.
Mr. Manius.
Your Honor, members of the court, we have one agenda announcement and then some meeting notice announcements. On the agenda, under transportation, which would be 8L1, this concerns renewal of interlocal agreements with cities of Hurst and Fort Worth. We're going to hold that particular item for 1 week. We want to clarify on our court communication the funding sources as it relates to that particular item. Also, we had scheduled a meeting of the IT Steering Committee today at 2 o'clock. That has been canceled due to illnesses in our presenters. Also, on the Public Employee Benefits Co-op, we were to meet initially on Wednesday. That meeting has been moved to Thursday, beginning at 3 o'clock at COG. Thank you.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular meeting of January the 8th.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Commissioner Brooks, I believe you have a resolution for ratification.
I do, and it is honoring the life of Ruth Carter Stevenson, who passed from this life a week ago. This county and indeed the city of Fort Worth were built by people who believed that to whom much was given, much was expected. That embodied the life of Ruth Carter Stevenson. She was a philanthropist, a patron of the arts without peer, and a great lover of all things Fort Worth. She carried on her family legacy, her father having been Amon Carter Sr., and she did it with gusto at a time when women were not usually empowered to play such roles. She was a pioneer and a great loss to our city and our county. So I would ask that this court honor her by ratifying this memorial resolution, which has already been presented to the family, and by also closing this meeting in her honor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move approval.
A motion is second to approve the consent agenda. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 5 additional items to bring to the Court this morning. Under the Administrator section, first one, we're requesting that the Court repeal the prohibition against outside burning in the unincorporated areas of Tarrant County.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 2, we're requesting that the Court approve an agreement between Johnson County and the Medical Examiner's Office as relates to the Medical Examiner's District Agreement for FY13.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 3, we're requesting that the Court approve a sub-recipient agreement with the Texas Division of Emergency Management in order that we may accept FY11 State Homeland Security Grant Program funds. This is to fund the law enforcement terrorism prevention activities in the northeast section of Tarrant County.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion is second. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 4, we're asking approval of a similar action. This is for training-related activities as it relates from the FY11 State Homeland Security Grant.
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And then finally, members of the Court, on item number 5, we're requesting that the Court approve the final grant adjustment notice as it relates to the 2010 Urban Area Security Initiative. That's part of the Homeland Security Grant Program.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're requesting authorization to accept a subrogation recovery check in the amount of $3,080.22.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Is there any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Ms. Clem.
Move to receive and file personnel agenda.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Receive and file personnel agenda. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
We have 2 additional items for the court. Item number 2, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for Precinct 4. The fiscal...
Hold on just one second. You want to clip the top of that thing, or we just, you know?
Is it $25 or $50?
My apologies.
I assume that's a county phone, low bid meeting specification.
No, actually, it's quite an expensive phone that I paid for. So, my apologies. Second item, we're asking the court to approve a waiver of terminal benefits for Precinct 4. The fiscal impact is estimated to be approximately $1,800, excluding fringe benefits, to the Road and Bridge Fund.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion is second. Any additional discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Let's hope not. And our third and final item, we're asking the court to approve addendums to our agreement with Rockport Community Network for workers' compensation, 504 Medical Provider Group.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Beecham?
Good morning.
Good morning.
We have 2 items for your consideration this morning. Our first bid award recommendation is for bid 2013-026. This is an annual contract for window washing services. Recommendation will be to award on a per enterprise basis, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our last bid award recommendation is for bid 2013-029. This is our annual contract for copier and fax supplies. Our recommendation would be to award on a per enterprise basis and a discount from the manufacturer's price list. Again, awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate bidders as shown in court communique. We did receive 3 bids from FPC Office Solutions, Enchanted Laser Products, and a company called Cartridge World that did not sign their bid document. We would recommend rejection of those 3 bids.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Someone doesn't sign their bid. If they were the low bidder, or any of the 3, what is the reasoning behind that? Okay, we're not going to recognize that if they were to agree to sign the bid with no other changes.
Law says you can't do that.
So the law specifically says
Cannot
that we
accept
can't do that.
a no-sign bid, yes, sir. It's a sad thing. I mean, we face it. I really hate to bring the news every week. And
We hear that every week.
sir,
I think we hear that almost
Yes,
every
we do.
week, that somebody's do they not, are these one-time bidders, or?
for the most part, I mean, most of these companies are repeat suppliers for Tarrant County. But if they don't sign it, we can't consider that.
Is there anything in the documents that highlights?
We highlight it. It's in bold print. It's mentioned several times in there. The only and we went through a period in which we had mandatory pre-bid conferences, and I certainly realized the court's desire not to do that. Quite honestly, though, when we did require that, we had less bids that were turned in not signed. But it's a catch-22. But we talk when we do have a pre-bid conference, whether mandatory or not. Every buyer makes that statement and remind the people several times to please sign their bid documents. It's new folks coming through. It's a sad thing, and we're sorry to have to bring the news every week.
Any other questions, discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Come right on down.
Good
Sheriff's
morning,
Department.
Judge,
Yes.
members of the court. Come before you this morning to ask you to approve a purchase and test security agreement with Standard and Associates for their National Dispatcher Selection Tests. The Sheriff's Department is seeking to purchase a limited number of these tests at this time to evaluate them as a possible replacement for the test currently used as part of the civil service selection process for communication specialists. Available for any questions.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson, I believe you have an interlocal agreement.
I do, Your Honor. Item 8M, 1A and B, I'd move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Appointments today? There being none, then we will proceed with the claims, including the addendum.
Move approval of the claims, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims, including the addendum. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have 4 items we're going to bring to the court this morning. The first one, item A, is an update from the hospital district. Mr. Early is here to address the court at this time.
Smile, you're not on candid camera.
Well, I'm not sure they're here for me.
You hope they're not.
Exactly. But I did want to give you all an update, as we always do on a monthly basis. And I want to tell you that there's been a lot of discussion about, board changes and leadership and those type things at JPS. All of us at the staff and all of us that are at JPS, board member or staff member, are totally committed to making JPS a better and a new place. And we've done that. In the last 3 years, I think we've made some substantial changes at JPS that make better patient delivery. I think far greater focus on the patient when they come into the organization, when they leave the organization, how we assess how they're doing. We've made strides in doing that. Are we where we want to be? Not at all. And I don't know that we'll ever be there, because I will always be a CEO that will tell you we need to be better than we were yesterday. But I think as the staff has made changes, and we've made some really tough decisions in personnel, the board needs to make their changes as well. They're an evolutionary body as well, and the changes that they make to deal with the staff and where we're going is two groups that need to be in unison with each other, and I think they are there, and I think we have a good board. And I want to compliment you all as judge and commissioners for appointing the people you appointed. They are diverse in their thoughts, they are diverse in their suggestions, and we don't always agree, because you can't run an organization as large as JPS and have an agreement. If you did, you'd probably be going the wrong way. You have that discord and that suggestion, so you come up with the best place. I think that Mr. Petty has taken an approach that I think is hugely valuable, and that is base things, as we have always tried to do in this new administration, on outcomes. When you go into a restaurant and you order food, you don't really care how many people are in the kitchen and what they're doing. You want good food. You want it brought to your plate. You don't want to look at the china that it's on or anything else. You want good food. JPS is, in essence, that way. The board directs us and says, here's your outcome. Our job as staff is to present that outcome and make sure that our fall rates are where they should be, our infection rates are where they should be, those type situations, making JPS better. So I think our board is and will do a good job. They've had a retreat. They had a very meaningful retreat last Friday, and it was very helpful. They brought out some good points, and I think that was very good. I also think that you need a board and a staff that's constantly adjusting to healthcare. The changes in healthcare, none of us, when we met 3 years ago, realized some of the things that are happening now in healthcare. It's different all the time. Healthcare is much more fluent than it ever has been. And if you don't keep up, you're behind. And part of your keeping up is guesswork, because it's tough to know exactly what the federal government expects from us. It's hard to know what the state government is expecting of us, but yet you still have to be at the forefront of knowing what you're doing, even though the rules and the guidelines haven't been established. So I think our board is moving in the right direction, and I'm proud of them, and I'm proud of the staff. You now, I would tell you, have good staff members and an administration who's willing to deal with what is coming our way. And so we're going to do everything we can to make sure that you always are represented by the best patient care we can do in a public hospital, and we'll provide that. And there's some tough challenges. There's going to be facility challenges that we have to deal with. I mean, there's chillers and things like that. Probably not a good day to talk about chillers, but we have situations where our equipment is older than what we feel comfortable with, and there has to be an addressing of that. But we'll do that over time, and we'll do it responsibly to you as commissioners and you as a judge. The legislative session. I was in Austin yesterday for a quick meeting with private hospitals trying to figure out the course of health care. And I will go down to Austin a little more frequently, but I also want to incorporate our board members into that. And we've not always had that ability to have board members participate. And I think we have some great board members that can participate in that legislative process. We will incorporate you all. Our theme for health care is that, and there's a lot of debate about Medicaid expansion and what you do with federal funds and how we accommodate in Texas with the Affordable Health Care Act. Our mantra at JPS is that it should be based on as much local control as you can possibly have. I think you as county commissioners and you as a judge can make better decisions about what you do with your local tax dollars and how it affects patients than somebody else making it for a statewide decision. So when we go down and when it gets time for tough decisions, I'm always going to go to the side that local control is far better in how we run our healthcare system. I also think we have a region that includes some of the other counties that you can be proud of too, with our 1115 waiver and some of the projects that we're working on and what the Public Health Department has worked on and what MHMR has worked on. I've briefed you on some of those in the past. I think we're doing a very good job in comparison to the other regions of the state. So I think local control is something we can be proud of. Quick update on St. Joseph's. That project now, the building is down. and now it's in its stage of trying to remove the concrete. They've taken a lot of the material, the steel beams, the girders, out and put that into recycling programs and reuse programs. And that's why we got a bid that was a little bit less for a company that was able to do that. And now it's a matter of taking that area down. I'm going to hand to Mr. Manius a handout for you all later on that he can give you later on during the day. I don't want to do it now, but it's a handout that shows you what the facility will look like. It's just basically a rendering of what that green space will look like. The trees that are on here are the existing trees. We won't take down those trees. And then what you'll have is some exercise stations that see the walkway path that we have, and we'll have exercise stations for people to do exercise programs. And Mr. Manius has already committed to come over on our first day and begin to do sit-ups and push-ups for folks and show our employees what it's like to really be in good shape. And I appreciate that.
It's a shame that Wilder isn't here today. That we could put him on an exercise program like that.
We could look at incentive programs for him as well, all led by example of Mr. Manius. And so I think all that is a positive situation for us. I think it's positive for the community. I get a lot of questions at the district as to when the new building's going up and what it's going to be. There is no new building right now. We don't have, we haven't had enough garage sales and cake sales to create a new building. So we don't have that ready to go. But when we do, we'll do that in conjunction with you all. We'll do that in conjunction with the board, but that's down the road as we figure out what that might be. So I think things are going well. Again, I'm proud of our administration. I'm proud of the board. I'm proud of the people that you appointed. And I'm not just providing you lip service. I think you got a lot of committed people to trying to deal with the changes that healthcare represents today. The last thing I will say, and I know you have a briefing after this, we do have a busy emergency room. We do have a busy urgent care. The Tarrant County Hospital District is not one that goes on divert. We don't stop taking people in our emergency room. We don't say, you know, we're overcrowded today, so we're just not going to take any more. We're dealing with it. And as I've mentioned to you before, when I started as the permanent CEO, our average daily census was about 175 people a day in our emergency room. Yesterday it was 340. And so we're averaging much higher numbers, not only because of the flu and the influenza that we're going through, but just the general state of our population.
We could have made a lot of money today, you know it? We may have to institute one of them policies.
Thought we had one.
So our emergency room and our urgent care is busier, but we are handling it and we are dealing with it, and it is a matter of coping, and we're doing just fine. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them, but thanks for all that you provide the hospital district.
Thanks for what you do, Robert.
You're more than welcome.
Appreciate it.
I've got two comments and a question,
Yes, sir.
if I may.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I am proud of our board and staff as well, and I would take a bit of exception to the description of division. I think it's more creative tension.
Right.
Among
I would
the board.
agree.
And I think all in all, the board is functioning quite well. The second comment related to your statement that nobody knows what the environment is going to be. So in many cases, it's just a matter of guesswork as to satisfying the federal and state regulations. My comment about that would be, as long as we focus on the patient,
Right.
then the rest of that will take care of itself.
You're exactly
We can't control that environment. The question is that in light of the state's development of its own women's health program, which is yet to be rolled out and implemented anywhere, that role is going to be increasingly local. What is JPS's response to the provision of women's health in Tarrant County?
All three good comments. I'll deal with all three of the comments you made, and there truly is not a division within the board. I think the board is doing very well, and I think their dialogue and their discussion is very positive. I think you have a board that's moving in the right direction. All 11 of them are very, very important with their viewpoints. Second thing is, you are exactly right, and it's one thing we've emphasized. If you put the patient first, if you look at how the patient gets into your system, how the patient thrives within the system, and how they're discharged and understand what they have so that you don't have repeated visits when you can reduce them, then if you focus on the patient, so many answers will be provided. When we get into funding sources, it can be challenging, but again, when you put that emphasis behind the patient, you're in the right place at all times. And that hasn't been where the public hospital has always put its emphasis.
Absolutely.
And I think it is definitely the mantra of what this board and this administration is trying to do. In women's services, what we're trying to do is from every aspect of women's health. We have 2 outstanding women clinics that are trying to make sure that they provide the best services possible for overall women's health, from the prenatal care all the way down to various issues that are predominant in women's health. We're doing all that we possibly can by looking at expanding some of our primary care services and trying to create what we've mentioned before, which is the concept of the medical home. To make sure, and medical home is not a facility. It's not a place that says you go here. It is a place to understand who your physician is and when you need to come in for primary care, and knowing that you have an individual that's calling you and contacting you. We've put in a nurse's hotline to help folks out, and that also helps in women's health as well. So we're trying to figure out what programs we can expand with. The other thing we're trying to do is figure out where the state is going from its funding sources and those issues. Working with the state, as you well know, from a legislative delegation, we've got a new delegation. So we're trying to do our best to educate them as to what our concerns and what our issues are regarding women's health and all issues as the state struggles with what it's trying to do. And what will be another big factor, which is one that you've played a key role in at the level in Washington and what you've done in your role, is Medicaid expansion in the state of Texas and what Texas does or does not do with any additional monies that might be available. And that goes into the realm of politics at times, but it's not politics at JPS. It's who shows up at your front door and the services you provide. It's not a political question for us.
No.
It's services. So we need to figure out what the state ultimately wants to do with its funding sources and figure out how best to utilize that. The other thing that we won't do at JPS is we won't stay silent. We'll provide our opinion of where we think money could best serve a population that some folks don't oftentimes see or understand.
Well, I believe that local control is going to be the better route, that this community can better service its needs and determine what those needs are if given the flexibility to do that. And I would encourage you to keep moving JPS in that direction.
We will. Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Any other comments or thoughts at this time? Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we have another item we'd like to bring to the court. This is item B, which is the seasonal influenza update. Dr. Curian from the Public Health Department is here to address the court at this time.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm here to give you a brief update of the flu activity in our community. As you're aware, Tarrant County, just like the rest of the state and nation, has experienced an early start of the flu season. And we continue to see higher levels of influenza-like activity in our community. Currently, our flu activity is coded at the widespread level. All 4 quadrants of our county are seeing higher levels of influenza-like illness. And we have been at this widespread level since week 46, which is the week of Thanksgiving. which is for this season, it's 8 weeks earlier than usual. Flu-related doctor's visits have already far exceeded the peak levels during the last moderately severe season, which according to CDC was the 2007-8 season, wherein the flu-related doctor's visits peaked at 6.3% in early February. In 2009, flu-like illness-related doctor's visits peaked at 16.1%. Currently, our flu-like related illness doctor's visits is at 11%, and this is way above the county baseline of 3.8%. The flu-like related doctor's visits have been on an upswing since the beginning of the season. We saw a slight dip in week 48 from 3.8% to 3.6%, but since then we've been on an upswing. Thus far, the respiratory surveillance specimens that have been tested at our lab, approximately 45% of them have tested positive for flu, of which approximately 50% have tested positive for H3N2 strain, 48% have tested positive for flu B. Now, H3N2 strain, which has been associated with more severe seasons in the past, is the dominant strain at the state and the national level. We track influenza-associated pediatric deaths. Nationwide, 20 deaths have been reported. Statewide, 5 have been reported thus far. In our jurisdiction, we have 1 influenza-associated pediatric death thus far this season. As far as school outbreaks go, we have no reports of school outbreaks this season, no reports of school closure. We are working with the 2 institutions that have reported 2 localized outbreaks. We are working closely with these institutions. We've already implemented control and containment measures. So at this point, although we cannot predict how severe the season is going to be, in the light of the early start of the flu season and the dominant showing or the strong showing of the H3N2, what we can say with certainty is that the season is looking bad in terms of number of individuals who are getting this illness, who are being infected with flu. As far as there are no clinical indication to suggest at this point that the severity of the illness is any severe than what we have seen in the past seasons. So if you haven't been vaccinated, this is the time to do so. We recommend vaccination for children above 6 months, unless it's absolutely, for everybody above 6 months, unless it's absolutely contraindicated. It's especially important for people in the high-risk group like children, people who are 65 years and older, pregnant women, and people with chronic health conditions. Because these are the individuals who are at risk for serious flu-related complications like bacterial pneumonia, severe ear and sinus infections, or worsening of their health conditions. The current strains that are contained in the vaccine is still well matched to the circulating flu strains. According to the CDC report that came out last Friday, the vaccine this season is characterized as being moderately effective. The early estimates of the vaccine effectiveness have indicated the current vaccine to have a vaccine effectiveness of 62%. So what this means is that people who have been vaccinated with flu vaccine are 62% less likely to get the illness, or 62% less likely to have a flu-related doctor's visits. Okay, so vaccination is still your best bet. Even with moderate effectiveness, flu vaccine can tremendously reduce the burden of the illness in terms of doctor's visits, hospitalizations, time lost from work, or even death. We understand that at this point, vaccines are a little harder to find than it was earlier in the season. Public health centers have dispensed to date close to 4,000 vaccines. Currently, we have vaccines available, private pay vaccines available in 3 of our public health centers. We still have vaccines under the Vaccine for Children program in all our public health centers. I've also been informed that local pharmacies like CVS, Walgreens are experiencing temporary outages, but according to their spokesperson, the person we spoke with, they can move vaccines from locations that have vaccines to the locations that are experiencing temporary outages within 24 hours. We are expecting a shipment of 200 doses tomorrow. These are private pay vaccines. We've also set up phone banks, internal phone banks, to help you in the search for vaccines and answer any flu-related questions. And the number to the phone bank is 817-248-6299. You can also dial 211 or visit flu.gov to assist with the search for vaccines. So besides vaccination, we continue to recommend daily preventive measures like washing your hands, covering your cough, don't cough into your hands, cough into your sleeves, and stay home when you're sick. And most important, especially those people who are in the high-risk group, if you experience a sudden onset of fever, headache, runny nose, sore throat, chills, body aches, generalized malaise, please seek prompt medical attention because antiviral medication started within 48 hours of onset can dramatically reduce the severity and the duration of flu. For more information, feel free to visit our website, which is www.tarrantcounty.com/flu. We have our weekly updates posted every Monday on the website.
So they can get it from the webpage, from our webpage. They can call the 817-248-6299.
That's correct.
They can dial 211, or they can go to flu.gov to get more information about the flu shot, the availability of a flu shot, and other questions that are frequently being asked with regards to this.
Exactly.
Dr. Curian,
Yes.
would you please emphasize that it's not too late to get a flu vaccine?
It is never too late to get flu vaccine as long as the flu viruses are circulating in our community. We continue to recommend vaccination and support vaccination efforts as long as we detect flu viruses in our community.
And it takes 2 weeks to develop the immunity, so the sooner one gets that vaccination, the better off he or she will be.
Absolutely. It takes 2 weeks from the time you've gotten your vaccine to elicit the adequate immune response to protect against flu. So the sooner you get the vaccine, the better. And that is why we always recommend to get the vaccine. Every flu season, get the vaccine as soon as the vaccines become available. Do not wait for the activity level to become widespread to get the vaccines.
However, if you did wait,
You
it's
can
still not too late.
still not too late. Like I said, flu season goes from May through October through May. So long as the flu is circulating in the community, we will continue recommending flu vaccinations.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the court, I will attempt to do the briefing on item C, which is the legislative issues. As you know, the legislature is back in session, and as we've done in the past, this will be a standing item on the briefings session. Mr. Mendez is in Austin today, as he was last week, and will continue to provide the court with the weekly briefings. There's a briefing packet in your court material, and I will attempt to answer any questions you might have.
There's a bunch of bad old bills on that.
Yes, sir, it is. This is going to be a session where that we will be playing a strong defense. So,
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Mayes.
thank you, members of the court. If we could go to item D, which is the State Highway 360 Feasibility Study. Before I introduce our speaker, let me state that on April 17th of 2012, through a court order, Commissioners Court approved a contract with PTP Transportation. This was to complete or conduct a viability study on State Highway 360. Ms. Tara Borelli is here. She has been the lead with the PTP in helping us through this study. I believe that what you're going to find is that this study has been well vetted, and while it is a study that has various variances as far as how we might move forward, I believe that it well serves what the court had requested that we do through that court order. And with that, I'm going to introduce Ms. Tara Borelli and ask her to make her presentation.
She laughed when you pronounced her name.
I laugh when everyone pronounces my name.
I did get
They always laugh at
You
me.
did.
They always laugh at me. So I just was wanting to make sure he understood that
Sure.
she laughed at you.
Judge, I was really, really close.
You know, it's kind of like hand grenades. Horseshoes and hand grenades. It just,
No,
close just don't sometimes get it.
no, Judge, not the way you do it.
Oh, that's mean.
Keep it up. You'll be sitting in here and enduring all of it from this point forward. I can guarantee you that.
Well, for the record, my name is Jenny Tara Borelli. I'm the managing partner of PTP Transportation. And with me today is a member of my staff, Rick Cronenberger, who's one of the engineers who worked with me in the development of the study that Mr. Manius referred to a moment ago. I got his name right, so turnabout's fair play. Our firm, as he said, was retained by Tarrant County to perform a feasibility assessment on the 360 project. Our assignment was to analyze the feasibility of the project by assessing demand, defining project improvements to accommodate growth on the corridor, and identify project development options and potential development partners that were interested in the project. The limits of the study that we conducted were from the southern part at US 287 in Ellis County, straddles Ellis and Johnson County, and moved north up to State Highway 183 near DFW Airport. As you know, this is a very important corridor for this part of southeast Tarrant County and provides major access for employers and facilities, rapidly growing facilities through the area, including the University of Texas at Arlington, Tarrant County College Southeast Campus, the new outlet mall in Grand Prairie, downtown Arlington, as well as the Arlington Entertainment District and the DFW Airport. To accomplish the feasibility study, we went through and assessed the existing conditions, analyzed traffic and growth data provided by the North Central Texas Council of Governments, reviewed development plans proposed by both NTTA and TxDOT, as this project has been reviewed many, many times by several agencies over the last few years, and worked with First Southwest to generate financing scenarios for the county's review and consideration. During the course of the engagement, we held meetings with the various cities along the corridor, including Mansfield, Grand Prairie, and Arlington. We met with NTTA board members and staff, and also staff and commission members of TxDOT to get everyone's input as to the importance of the project, what they saw as far as future development potential of the project, and try to incorporate all of that into our study. As you know, out there today, we have a frontage lane in each direction from US 287 to the Tarrant County line, 2 frontage lanes in each direction from the Tarrant County line to Camp Wisdom, 2 frontage lanes and 2 main lanes in each direction from Camp Wisdom up through I-20 and on up to State Highway 183. Using population, employment, and traffic growth data projected for Tarrant County, specifically for southeast Tarrant County, we defined the need for future facility upgrades. This information, the information that we used, the analysis that we did, was based on the most recent data included in the Mobility 2035 plan produced by NCT-COG, and used the agency's 2040 demographic population demographic forecast. As not a surprise to you, Tarrant County is the second largest county in the region and has seen explosive growth. You know, as your population is topping 1.8 million today, it's projected to move to 2.8 million by 2035. The cities along this corridor are growing rapidly as well. The populations in Arlington and Grand Prairie were two of the fastest growing cities in the Metroplex between the years 2000 and 2010, and their populations are projected to grow rapidly by 2030, with Mansfield hitting 123,500, Grand Prairie 231,000, and Arlington 437,000. To get a true sense of what was needed on the 360 project, we did a broader study of a corridor that the 360 project was the midpoint of, and looked at local streets and other facilities that were included in this corridor to give a sense of what roads are projected to be improved over the next 20, 30 years, what population growth were going to happen in that same time frame, to get to a point to see how much demand was truly going to be placed on the 360 facility. As we went through and looked at the demand and capacity within this broader transportation corridor, at every screen line, at every spot along the way, we were seeing deficiencies in capacity by the demand that is either existing today or projected to exist in the future. The one exception to that was we are seeing some relief that is provided by the opening of the President George Bush Turnpike Western Extension, that section that is open from I-20 to I-30. It provides some temporary relief, but in the grand picture, that's only a sort of a moment in time, a quick relief. Long term, when you look at the growth that is projected along this corridor, something needs to happen. And 360 has to be expanded and to accommodate the growth. Even in the traffic and revenue projections that were conducted on behalf of North Tarrant Tollway, the 360 corridor was loaded up as much as possible to determine how much capacity needed to be put on the President George Bush Western Extension, and at its at the height of the growth, the 360 project still carried roughly 30% of the traffic in that area as it exists today, and all facilities were overloaded in the future. So when you look at that, when you look at what NTTA has put on the ground, when you look at the funding that's available through the RTC to build and improve other thoroughfares through this area, and you look at what needs to be done on 360, our assessment is that we need to improve every section of 360 from the south to the north, and have gone through in our assessment and made some determinations about what improvements need to be made in the near term and what improvements could be pushed out to a longer term. In the section between 287 and Camp Wisdom, which today only has frontage roads, no main lanes, we're saying that 3 main lanes in each direction need to be added, and that is there's ample right-of-way in that section that could occur without the purchase of any additional right-of-way. In the section between I-20 and I-30, again, 3 additional main lanes are tolled, in our assessment, tolled main lanes, and we'll get to the talk of financing in a moment, but tolled main lanes in each direction would need to be added, and under local policy as well as state law, to add any additional toll lanes in that area, you would have to replace the free lanes that are out there. So in essence, you're putting in 3 additional general purpose lanes in the center, as well as 3 additional in each direction express lanes as well as rebuilding the frontage roads. The I-30 to the State Highway 183 section is identical to the section between I-20 and I-30. To accommodate current growth, future growth, you would need to add 3 general purpose lanes in each direction in the center, add the local expressways outside of that, and rebuild the frontage roads. Also, at the I-30 and State Highway 360 intersection, there is a larger problem that cannot be fixed by just adding additional main lanes. And that is the fact that at that intersection, you have an antiquated design, and the movements between the I-30 and 360 are hampered in every direction, and we're suggesting that that intersection needs to be modernized. The connection between the two facilities needs to be updated with the addition of direct connector ramps in each direction to ease the flow of traffic between the improved I-30 as it exists today and State Highway 360. It's a Herculean task to think that you could do all of this in a single phase. That's it. The entire world would be under construction out there. And so going through and looking at financial constraints and timing of project development, a phasing plan was proposed, and we suggested that phase 1 from US 287 up to Camp Wisdom, Sublette Camp Wisdom Road would be phase 1. Following right behind that would be the construction of the direct connects that I spoke of a moment ago at I-30 and 360. Those two phases cannot move together concurrently or go to construction concurrently, because the phase 1A, the direct connects, would have to have more federal oversight and federal approval for that project to move forward. Moving behind that in a phase 2, looking at improving the section from I-20 up to I-30, and then finally as a phase 3 to improve the section from I-30 up to State Highway 183. We went through and did some cost estimates for each section. These cost estimates are in 2012, 2013 dollars, with the exception that an inflation has been put on phase 1 and phase 1A to take it to the midterm of construction. Since both of those would look to be able to move forward in more the near term, we could identify a timing lapse and add a construction adjustment for those numbers. As you can see on your screen, the cost for phase 1 is a little over $507 million. For phase 1A, the direct connect ramps at I-30, about $313 million. Phase 2, somewhere north of $681 million. Again, that one doesn't have an inflation adjuster because we could not define at what year that project would move forward. So that number is solely in 2012, 2013 dollars. And the same goes for phase 3, which is estimated at just north of $432 million. You know, we're all aware that transportation dollars from state and federal sources is rapidly diminishing. And, you know, if you're going to take on a project as complex as State Highway 360, it's important to consider all the funding alternatives and revenue enhancements that might be available with structuring of financing. And, you know, in our belief, you know, seeking funding contributions from regional partners, trying to secure some level of federal and state funding, such as through a TIFIA loan, or minimizing operating and maintenance costs, would be an important thing that would be a positive contribution to the financial feasibility of this project. You know, the contributions from regional partners might come in the form of direct cash contribution, or it might come from the revenue generated from the establishment of transportation reinvestment zones along the corridor established by the cities adjacent to State Highway 360. As I said, federal dollars might come through the securing of a transportation infrastructure finance loan, a TIFIA loan. State participation could come through an equity contribution from TxDOT and administered through the RTC, or the conveyance of right-of-way from the state if a development group was put together that did not include TxDOT. And then finally, value engineering the project and phasing the project appropriately helps the feasibility long-term. In our assessment, we went through and did some tolling models, some tolling configurations, and we were very fortunate that the project geometry had been defined in sufficient detail by NTTA and TxDOT over studies they have done over the past few years to allow us to establish some tolling locations if the project moved forward as a toll road. We developed two models for the section from 287 to I-20 or to Camp Wisdom, because that is the section of the project, as I said a while ago, which is most likely to move forward in the near term. And we developed full revenue models for that section of the project. Our goal in this project was not to necessarily nail down an exact number if we did a toll road out there of what the exact number of toll transactions was going to be in any specific year, but to assess toll potential of the project. The first model that we came up with, we went through and looked at a way to enhance revenue through the placement of tolling equipment. The second model we developed, we did in conjunction with NTTA to look at a tolling model that more fit their typical operational model, and using both of those numbers, we projected revenue and then began to work with First Southwest. First Southwest was gracious enough to develop all the financial scenarios for this study based on the cost and revenue projections that input provided by PTP. There are a lot of numbers on this page, and in the study that you were given, all the financial scenarios can be found in Appendix D. But just real quickly, looking through this, we developed three models for each of the two tolling scenarios that we came up with to test the various potential options of this project. The good news is, in the opinion of PTP and the opinion of First Southwest, in each of these models, it shows that that Phase 1 appears to be financially feasible and merits further study and action, provided that a credit-worthy public entity or a group of credit-worthy public entities pull together and have the ability and the willingness to support the cash contributions or credit enhancements required for the financings. And that's a lot of words to say. You've got to have a strong sponsor of the project, credit-worthy sponsor, to make this kind of project work.
And when you're talking about something like this, the NTTA and the bonds that they sell are what are called normally revenue bonds.
Yes, sir.
Which basically says to the bondholder, you get paid if there's revenue left to pay you.
That's right.
Whereas a public entity bond, in all likelihood, would be one backed by the full faith and credit of the governmental entity's general operating fund or their tax rate.
Or their tax rate.
So the state would be like a AAA. We've got a AAA.
Yes, sir.
Arlington, Grand Prairie, Mansfield, cities along that are all probably AA or AAA.
Yes, sir. And
which is significantly better. And that's when you talk about credit enhancements, that's what you're talking about there, is the fact that a lower interest rate ultimately ends up meaning that the financial feasibility of it may be stronger and there'll be less money spent on interest.
Absolutely. Much stronger, much more readily acceptable by the financial markets. And as you said, you're spending money on road and not on interest. And the more efficient you can make your financing, the higher the rating you can achieve for your financing, means more dollars go to improvement on the ground and not to important line items, but such as capitalized interest and long-term interest and reserve accounts to support your financing. But more of those dollars, as you get to a AA and a AAA rating, actually go to the improvements that are put on the ground. And yes, sir.
You, in your study, you mentioned that an NTTA bond is typically a BBB bond. Is that correct?
No, I think what in the study we looked at a couple of models that would achieve BBB rating, but I believe that all the NTTA ratings at this point have achieved at minimum a AA rating. I think they have a couple of AAA ratings as well, but they have been highly rated.
Backstopped with TxDOT or somebody else?
They have done as with the new 121, the President George Bush Western Extension. That project specifically had a credit enhancement from TxDOT in the form of an equity contribution, I believe, and so that helped bring that rating higher. Most of their other ones have been backed by the financial security of their entire system, which is becoming a more mature system, and so they receive higher ratings. And you see a lot in bond ratings for revenue, toll revenue bonds, and the judge alluded to this, that it's either, if it's a brand new agency, typical, or a brand new project with a startup toll agency, you typically have a backstop or a credit enhancement by some other entity, a county or a state agency. In a system like NTTA's or Harris County Toll Road Authority down in the Houston area, they're able to, while a lot of the Harris County has done a backing of its entire bond system with its, they did from the very beginning, as did Fort Bend Toll Road Authority as well. When they started their system, they did a backing, a full faith and credit backing, but those systems are becoming mature enough that it backs itself now.
But even within the history of the Harris County toll system, HECTRA,
yes, sir.
Even though the county pledged the backing of their GO revenue,
right,
they never had to go in and touch it. Now they did have to get a vote of the citizens to allow them to do that.
Yes, sir.
But what that's doing now, in their mature system, as Jenny mentioned, it is spinning off about $160 to $170 million a year for their roads within the various precincts of Harris County. And in addition to that, I believe they have somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion sitting inside in reserves inside of their.
They do, and they are continually expanding their system. They're starting on 2 new roads this year.
What equity contribution did Harris County, and I know this, they've been at it a long time.
Since 1980 something, right? Right. Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I think your study shows, maybe what is it, 20%?
Roughly
15, 20%.
on that first phase, depending on which model you went after.
Yeah.
The Harris County, when it started, its toll road system, and you're right, it started with the Hardy, and then pretty quickly thereafter started the first constructions of Beltway 8, which is called Sam Houston now. They were providing the upfront capital out of their money to get the first one going, and then after that, they were able to do it on the strength of the project itself. The Hardy was a less credit-worthy first facility than the Sam Houston. The Hardy was much more important to Harris County because they needed a guaranteed route to the Houston airport from downtown. And so they took the risk to start on that project, but with the Sam Houston right behind it, it was extremely successful almost from day one. And then since then they built the West Park, which was successful and cash flowed positive from day one, and now they're moving on several other projects down there. And Fort Bend followed it right now. Actually, Harris County, which loaned Fort Bend toll the first money to start their very first tollway, now is loading Montgomery County, its toll road authority, some money to start their second toll project. They're doing a first direct connect project very much like the one at the I-30-360.
And those are only 3 counties that are involved right now?
Well, actually, very different than up here, where with the authority that created NTTA was a regional toll authority. In Harris County, when Harris County got the approval to create HECTRA to build its toll roads, all the counties down there decided it wanted independent approval to create toll road authorities. So we actually, on paper, have, I believe, 7 right now. And they work very much in concert with each other, but they also are very independent too. But every contiguous county to Harris County has legislative approval to create a toll.
Now, you said something that I had not understood before. You're saying that Harris County, did they loan?
They loaned money to them. They loaned to the toll road authority, I believe, money to start the Hardy toll
So
road.
the HECTRA loaned money to, I'm talking
Harris.
about these other ones.
Oh, yes.
HECTRA loaned money to Fort Bend or Montgomery or one of those counties.
Yes, sir.
To do their first projects. Did they do that in the form of a loan that would be paid back with interest, or did they do it and get equity in the roads to bring back revenue?
The one for Fort Bend, they loaned them and they were paid back. The one for Montgomery County, in fact, those MOUs are going through court right now because, like I said, Montgomery County has this first direct connect project, but then they're also starting a section at the Montgomery County section of the 249, or the beginning of what they call the Aggie Freeway down there. And the terms of that are not yet known.
Is that going to be a freeway that you don't know what direction you're going?
It's the Aggie Freeway. So I'm glad you said that, not me. It will eventually go all the way to Navasota, and from the Sam Houston Tollway up 249, and then bend around through Montgomery County, Grimes County to hit Navasota and tie into State Highway 6. And so there have been some conversations that maybe they just want to do a credit enhancement of the debt that Montgomery County Toll Road does for their section of that project. There have also been some talks that they would just do very much like they did Fort Bend and loan money and have it paid back with interest. So,
but would that engage in that? Because Navasota is in what county?
Navasota is in Grimes County, I believe. I think it's Grimes. Right, I believe so. And so really that project is, in essence, going to end up having 3 toll authorities. Harris County is doing the section from Beltway 8 or Sam Houston Parkway out to the Montgomery County line. Montgomery County will do the section from the Montgomery County line up through Pinehurst. And there has just been a deal struck, the framework of a deal struck with TxDOT, where TxDOT will take the section from Pinehurst on out to Highway 6 to complete the remainder of that as it goes through the rest of Montgomery County and into Grimes County. So, I think it's the nature of toll projects today, where you're seeing entities working with each other in the smartest way possible to get roads on the ground, and it's in the interest. From Harris County, for instance, the reason they're willing to loan money to Montgomery County is because all the growth for that project will come from the Montgomery County section. It opens up a lot of area to be developed. So that will enhance the ridership on their piece. Moving north and west, Montgomery County is not that interested in taking a project all the way in over to Highway 6 into Navasota. That doesn't really take care of their needs, and so giving up primacy to TxDOT to let TxDOT do the remainder of that two-county project made sense, and will ultimately, put a full road on the ground, which needs to happen. So I think that cooperation is what you're going to see more often over the next decade in the state, as different entities figure out what piece of the pie how they can participate and how much they can afford to participate to make a road happen. But again, that's just a difference down there than where we don't have regional tolling authority like you do up here. Although, and you've seen that here in the Metroplex, there are several counties here in the Metroplex within the jurisdiction of NTTA that have the ability to create their own county toll road authority, like the counties in the Harris County area, or down on. They also have a few down on the border that have the same ability. Tarrant County has that ability to create its own toll road authority by its population today. So
Collin County has a
Collin County has already developed theirs, and have looked at a couple of toll roads. I think they're progressing on one, not fully, but they're at least still looking at that loop that goes from Collin County over into Denton County.
Loop 9, but at least on the regional basis, we've talked about Loop 9 for years and years and years, and at least when I first came on the Corps, was first on the RTC, Loop 9 was going to be in the southern part of Tarrant County,
Right.
and then on the western side. But because nothing really matured and went on, and because of all the development as well as all the gas exploration, Loop 9 is now, even in its extremely preliminary, just almost still infancy stage. It's not even an infant yet. It's still in a design. It is now closer to Weatherford and in Johnson County, because there's just the development in the gas wells that prevented it from being able to be located inside of Tarrant County.
Right.
But I think Collin County did create a toll authority. I think they did that in an effort to be able to maybe acquire land and hold on to some of what they saw as the potential for this Loop 9, and not to let the development get away, and therefore push the road outside of what might eventually be outside of.
Not necessarily to build tolled roads, but to.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, there was at one time some speculation that they felt like that by creating the authority that there might be an opportunity to take over the existing roads, but the legislature very quickly said, or indicated, I believe, that NTTA has those roads. They've bonded those roads. They're their roads. So, I think we could create one, just as we have 3 different transit agencies. I believe that the Regional Transportation Council, which is the MPO, which has federal designation as well as state in the area, has expressed some real hesitation about creating another transit authority, any other transit authorities, or any more toll authorities. We prefer to work within the structure that we have, as long as that's something that is not a hindrance versus an asset. And certainly we all have the ability to do that, and I think we could do that and build our own projects within Tarrant County or within any one of the counties that are currently in the boundaries of NTTA, which, by the way, are the 4 counties and any of the ring counties around that, I believe is the definition of NTTA from that standpoint. But all of the toll roads that are being managed lanes that are being built at this point in time, regardless of who are building them, whether it's Cintra or whether it's TxDOT or anybody else for that matter, are all going to be operated and operated by the NTTA, not necessarily maintained.
Hillwood has an authority to build tolls.
Yeah, but the challenge that we have been facing is that NTTA, the Regional Toll Authority, is overly leveraged.
Yes,
They
sir.
have no more money.
essentially NTTA cannot take on additional project without financial backing from another public entity or a private company, okay?
For at least 8 to 10 years.
For at least 8 to 10 years. It could be longer. In the meantime, as a county, we are expecting more congestion. We're expecting economic growth to be slowed down because of the population. Our population is outpacing essentially the funding capacity of NTTA and TxDOT. 360 South has been on the plan for 20 years. 20 years. I'm talking about just a certain portion. And I'm sure in other parts of the county, we have other projects. And in the past, our role as a county has always been passively advocating. We maneuver through a political process to advocate for certain projects and so forth. And I think even though we may not want to build toll road, that option is always there. But I think if we position ourselves so we can have a more influential say in the priority of highway projects within the county, it will give us a little bit more leverage that way. The priority, the regional priorities and the state priorities don't always align with the county priorities.
What specifically are you suggesting that we do?
There are several options that we have been exploring. A tollway authority is certainly an option, and we understand that the RTC and NTTA and maybe even TxDOT may not think it's a good idea. But I think there are certain benefits there that's worth for us as a county to look into. We have been also talking about a possibility of some sort of a transportation fund, some sort of a infrastructure bank, for lack of better words. I don't have all the legal details, and I think the potential of growth in all area warrant us at the very least look into and exploring the various options that would allow Tarrant County to have a more direct control over the transportation outcome of our county in the next 20, 30 years. Otherwise, essentially, we would be continue to go through this political process, which can take 20, 30 years. And by that time, it might be too late.
I would say that Commissioner Wynn and I have been working on this since Jenny and her firm began that process, and that was actually a part of that. When we started it, we had been told previously by the state as well as by NTTA as well as by the region that there was really not the interest to do anything on 360 at this point in time. And so, again, Commissioner Wynn, stressed that with the growth that was occurring along that corridor in Mansfield, the traffic congestion problems that we were having, that we needed to look at alternatives, and that's why we asked Jenny and her group to do the study. As that process began, it became of more interest, I would say, to the region and to TxDOT. And, I've often, or at least recently often said, I think we found a way to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. Because now there is a lot of interest in the deal, and TxDOT has at least made some initial proposals to NTTA and to the region where they might build the project and the region still benefit from the excess revenue that would come off that project at some point in time. And when I say the region, the policy of the region with regards to those types of projects is that the revenue is shared 75% to the county or to the TxDOT region where the road presides, and then 25% based upon toll usage. So Tarrant County and some other counties to the west would benefit 75% of whatever excess revenue came to the region. And that's still a point that they're talking about between NTTA and TxDOT.
Would it be a fair statement that by by taking the bold step of commissioning this study, it's gotten everybody interested in trying to keep us under the tent?
Keep us from getting under the tent, maybe.
Keep us from getting out from under the tent.
Yeah,
Going on our own.
I think what it is, and I think in this particular project, you're exactly right. I believe that if we were to go forward, if for whatever reason the TxDOT and NTTA, they could not reach a decision, then I believe we could still explore ways of going forward, but I think as this information shows, it would require cash to be deposited or to be committed to the project, and that cash could come from any, again, as was mentioned, any public entity. It could be from the county, from the cities along that way, or from an entity that we would set up or might look at setting up. It could come from the issuance of bonds. But if it came from the issuance of bonds, then we've got to go to the people, and so it delays it a little bit more. So obviously, if TxDOT or NTTA can reach an agreement that can move this forward without us having to necessarily commit cash, but we still get some return off of it, or having to go to the election for this project, then I think, that's the way we should look. But as Dr.
When Harris County set up HECRA and they put up cash to credit enhance that first deal, what was the source of that cash? Was it
GO revenue? Is the backing, is the full faith?
This was cash they had laying around?
No, they went, I believe.
They issued bonds?
They issued bonds. They did two things. They went to a referendum. Fort Bend Toll did the same thing. They took a referendum to their voters saying that any toll project, in their case they broadened it, not to a specific project, but toll projects overall, and said any toll projects that we do, we will be the backstop. We'll be the credit enhancer and provide pledge our full faith and credit of our general revenue to this project. And then they issued bonds to based on that credit enhancement of that security to build the projects. And as the judge pointed out, they've never called on that.
A need for 20% of the Phase 1 cost. That's
it depends on which of the models that we're looking at. The very best model that we're looking at, it looks that you would have to do a cash contribution. I'm trying to see those numbers are so small.
It's $90 million.
$90 million overall, and that project is 550. I have to look at the numbers.
Well,
it's 10 to 15%.
But let me ask this question. That particular project, and this is something that I believe the state and NTTA are working on, is proposed as a little bit different. And really, if they go forward with it, let them go forward. But I think they're talking about a scaled down construction where they don't fully build it out from the very beginning. And they're also talking about TIFIA loans, which is a loan that you get from the feds at a much lower interest rate, and neither one of those.
The line is around the block for those kind of loans.
They are. So that's why when Jenny presented this, she did not present this with the thought that we would get a TIFIA loan on that particular part of the project. But it would not be something we would not at least explore the possibility of getting.
Absolutely. As we said a while ago, you should try to secure as much contributions for this project to make it feasible, whether that's participation by the cities who are very interested in making this project happen, a TIFIA, a credit enhancement, some equity contribution from the state. I mean, anything that you can put into it makes those numbers better and better.
But one of the things, and again, I think that right now we're kind of sitting on the sidelines on the 360 deal, waiting to see what the state and NTTA work out. If they don't work something out, then I think it brings us off the bench to see what we can do. But, as we first talked with Jenny, one of the things that we said about this entity that we might be forming or be looking to form to fund some of this stuff, we said, in addition, look at roads like 199, look at 377, look at 287 north and south, look at, the development that's going on around the Walsh Ranch, look at 35 and 820. So I think there's a lot of other possibilities, and so even if the state were to decide to come in and do the 360 project, that one of the things that we should continue to look at as a county in cooperation or in partnership with maybe some of the cities within our county is it feasible that we put some of our cash into a reserve to do this? Should we look at going to the voters and saying, we from time to time have bonding capacity that we might be able to do just as we did with our last one without having to raise the tax rate, or maybe, we say to them, just tell us what you want to do with regards to some projects. Right now, we don't have the ability to do that because we haven't gone to the voters. So our hands are kind of tied, and if the state backs out, then it's going to be a much slower process to get to that point. Because we're going to have to explore how we might do that. But I think there are options available that we could let the voters participate in and decide if they feel like that's the way they want to go. I'm not proposing that we do anything as a court, but simply at this point in time consider what TxDOT and NTTA may do, and then at that point we talk with the voters, and if we felt like we were going to have to do something, and see what their feeling would be. But I think in the long term, given the funding crisis that we're in, not only at a federal level but also at the state level, that we may need to explore with our other city partners.
Yeah, there's not much capacity there.
Yeah, and
either level.
And they've got, as you were talking this morning, they've got 199 messed up, going up in toward Azle, going down toward Benbrook. 377's messed up. 287 is clogged, both coming in and from the north and the south. And so there's a lot of things that I think we should be exploring. And I think this study has at least given us some alternatives for how we might address those things. And and it may encourage TxDOT and them to partner with us also.
I think it's put some highlight on this project, and it's allowed Tarrant County and its partners, the cities that are very interested, to sort of coalesce around the project with some more knowledge about what the potential could be and what some options are that they can put on the table with their various partners of NTTA and TxDOT and that sort of thing. And so I think it's put you in a better position than you were 2.5 years ago, a year ago, even 6 months ago when we started this. And it's clear by the conversations that we had with the various agencies. From day one, Arlington, Grand Prairie, Mansfield, they were very excited and they want this project. They each had a different view of which section was the most important section, perhaps because they need to take care of the needs of their constituents. But they believed 360 needed to happen. But I believe it's brought NTTA and TxDOT to the table to discuss this with Tarrant County, and that's been a positive.
No, it is indisputable that this is one of the fastest growing counties in the country and certainly in the region, and that our infrastructure has not kept up with the rate of growth. You ask any citizen out there how much time they spend sitting in traffic trying to get around this county, and the stories are just horrific. I want to be a good regional player. I think we should be a good regional player. But that does not necessarily mean that we should subsume our interests to the region. We need options.
I think we have to look at the long term. This project, 360, whether it's a go or not, we still have to look at the long term because we are expecting the population in Tarrant County to be larger than that of Dallas County by 2035. 2035 is not a long time. It's just around the corner. I would strongly recommend that we bring in an expert who understands transportation, who understands the political process from the federal level to the state level and the regional level, to provide us with options that as a court that we can take to remedy the future problems that we know will occur. And without the details, without all the legal instruments, the knowledge about those legal instruments, we can't make an intelligent decision. So I would recommend to the court, in a form of a motion, that we bring in an expert to explore those options to us.
I might request or just ask that, as opposed to us making a motion at this point in time, that we continue to do a little bit more look at it. You know, I think that Jenny and her firm have helped us kind of begin to get to the point of exploring that. You know, and again, Senator Harris was kind of the one that encouraged us, as only Senator Harris can do, to at least look at this project. And I think, you know, the 360 South project is probably the one that was the best model for us to start off with. But I think, Andy, as opposed to actually moving on this right now, we might kind of maybe end up having another little workshop on it. And in the meantime, maybe ask each one of y'all to talk with the mayors or to talk with the cities that are in your precincts, and to get a sense from them is there, you know, if there are roads that they would support. I mean, obviously in this particular one, Grand Prairie, Mansfield, and Arlington were 100% behind this. They understood that we were looking at a toll road. They understood what it was going to mean to do this in the phase part of it. I've mentioned a lot of roads, but I've not talked with a lot of folks along those communities and along those roads to determine whether or not there's any interest in that. And I did learn as commissioner that there are certain communities that don't like to build roads.
Well, I think that's a good point, and a toll road's not the answer to every problem.
It's not.
And they don't go everywhere, and they don't need to go everywhere. But you know, having somebody to guide us on some of this stuff probably makes a lot of sense. I know that I've been involved with YouTube, Metroport, every project we've done. We've had somebody working with us, a professional. Not always the same one, but and we've been, you know, that particular group was fairly successful in getting the DFW connector and a lot of stuff done on other projects, so, including working on 360 North. So, but you know, it takes some help, takes some expertise. But the thing is, roads don't happen overnight. It is a long, long haul, and it's not uncommon. 20 years is nothing. Southwest Parkway,
Chisholm Trail Parkway, 40 years.
820 North, 820, that portion, you know.
We're talking about 360 South, and I can tell you, I grew up in Grand Prairie. 360 has been under construction for over 60 years.
Yeah, well, I can believe it.
I can attest to that.
And it doesn't need to just be, and I think what y'all laid out, going basically from 287 north to 183, you know, you might even look at going on further where it merges into 121 in Grapevine. You know, why quit at 183? There's going to be continue to be
The growth is
congestion.
going to continue.
Along the lines of what Commissioner Wynn was saying, I would like for us to look in the pretty near future to how do we go forward and continue this planning, and the possibility of, you know, especially as we start our new budget, and to begin to look at maybe the possibility of having someone that would constantly be there to kind of help us figure out how we might go forward and do some roads, because You know, we got us a new transportation director back there. He understands a little bit of what's going on at TxDOT, or we hope he does. If anybody can understand what's going on there. But I think there's a lot of need here in our county that we need to try to stay up with.
I agree with what you're saying, though, that we need to maybe slow down just a little bit. Let's talk to these cities and other people. Let's test the depth of that pool before we dive in.
Right.
Let's find out what we've got to do.
And I'm concerned about what kind of expert we hire. We're not just talking about building a road. We're talking about building a system of how we change our business practices to help our infrastructure keep up with growth. We're not just talking about designing and building a road.
You've got rail issues, you got high-speed rail issues, you've got airport issues, you've got...
Well, we got the federal government running out of money. We've got the state government running out of money. And, folks, we ain't got a whole lot of surplus laying around, and cities definitely don't, if you look around and talk to the mayors and all.
Right.
So we've got a joint problem. All of us do.
Sure do.
Jenny, thank you very much.
Certainly.
I think it's been an excellent process, and I think it has prompted a lot of discussion that otherwise we wouldn't have had, and I don't know where we'd be if we hadn't started this. I'm pretty sure we would have been. There had been no other discussions going on at the region, NTTA, or TxDOT had we not started the process.
You're stomping our feet right now.
Good. I know there's a lot of information in the studies, and to the extent that any of you have further questions or need some clarification, please feel free to call me. I'm happy to discuss it with you further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Your Honor, that's all we have at this time.
Then at this time, we will recess our open meeting and proceed to closed session to discuss items exempted under Section
Back row to 15. Move it to.
Having returned from our closed session and there being no business to conduct at this time, we are adjourned.